Hi, Leah. I'm so glad to have you with us today.
I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Before we get into cycle syncing today, will you
Yeah.
just give us a little bit about your background and how you got interested in this and where you are today?
Yeah. So my name is Leah Brueggemann. I'm a certified functional practitioner, and I got into hormones because I had horrible hormones. I think that's the case for everybody. Growing up, when I first got my period, I actually have six brothers, so not that periods were talked about very much in my house. But when I did get my period, I had horrific cramps. I was like curled up on the floor. And I think it depends on how your mom maybe introduces periods to you. But in my house, it was like, oh, you're becoming a woman. It's this beautiful thing. And I was like, this is not beautiful. This is horrible. If I could live without this would be awesome. And my mom was just like, just how it is. And these cramps just prepare you for child labor, for
Oh
like
gosh, yeah.
childbirth one day. And
Uh-huh.
I'm like, great, mom. So I just would always kick back the Midol because I just thought it was normal.
Hmm.
And so I went on, and this was pretty much ever since I got my period, every period would knock me out. I would call in, I would actually have my mom come get me from school because I would be so sick and I'd throw up, and it was just bad. And I just continued my life, went to college, got my degree in music actually, and health was just not even remotely on my radar. I was music focused and all of the things until I was doing a self breast exam and I got found a lump. Like I'm talking like size of a golf ball lump. It wasn't like, oh, there's this tiny little lump. It was massive. And so I went into the doctors and it was benign. I had fibroadenomas, which are benign breast tumors, thank heavens. But they were very much on me like, oh, you need to get this surgically removed. Like, you don't know if it's a simple or a complex fibroadenoma. Like, breast cancer ran in my family. It was just a lot of fear mongering.
Scary.
Like, it was
Yeah.
a lot of scariness. And they're like, oh, there really is no harm to them. It's just, it could potentially XYZ. And
Okay.
so I'm like, okay, I thought I was going to have to get it surgically removed. And I had never even known what a fibroadenoma was. I was Googling it. I'm like, what is
Hmm.
this thing?
Doc.
And turns out that the percentage of women that get them, they return after the surgery. They just keep getting them. They keep coming back. And I'm like, I'm self-employed. I'm a musician. Like, I'm going to fork over all this money for a surgery for them to come back. I'm like, why would I do that? That's pointless. So that's what made me step into the health world, as I was like, maybe there's another solution out there. And I'm so grateful that I did. Like, I thought outside the box there, but it took years because I was throwing spaghetti at a wall. The thing we always tell people don't do, if I could go back to my younger self and tell
Hmm.
her what to do, I'd be like, go find somebody who has been through this and ask them what they did.
Hmm.
Figure out, go talk to them because I was just throwing spaghetti at the wall. I was under the impression like, I just need to find the magic supplement. I need to find the magic pill, the 30-day like cleanse that I can do and then go back to my lifestyle. There's no correlation to the fact that I drink gallons of coffee and I eat bagels for breakfast. There's no correlation with fibroadenomas. So that was where I was going. And I did start going to some naturopaths and to some practitioner, and they were very focused on my fibroadenomas. And the reason why I say that as it's important is because none of the things they did changed my fibroadenomas because everyone was focused on one thing,
Yeah.
fibroadenomas.
Hmm.
They're caused by excess estrogen. You can supplement progesterone. We can put you on DIM. We can put you on this supplement. Nobody looked at my hormones, my lifestyle as a whole. They would give you very restrictive diet guidelines, like piece of paper,
Hmm.
avoid all these foods, eat these foods, take these supplements, see ya in 6 weeks, right?
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
so you're on it, and you're like, I'm starving. This food isn't working. I feel like I can't eat any food. Okay, I just need to stick to this for 30 days. And then I'm going to go back to the naturopath, and they're going to be like, oh, you're healed. Go back to it.
Hmm.
Was just, there's a very much a disconnect, I think, sometimes when you just go to these one-off appointments. And not all naturopaths, not all practitioners, not everybody is like this. It's not everyone's created equal. So I think it's really important to do your due diligence when you're looking for somebody. But nobody ever asked me about my cycles, which I think is very
Okay.
weird now.
Yeah. Okay, so they
Like,
weren't even asking you if you had regular cycles, what your history of your periods or
no.
cramps, anything like that
It
to
was
really
just
look at it.
like, you have a cycle, right? Okay, when was your last one? Cool. But mine were all
Okay.
over the place. Like
Mhm.
anytime I was slightly stressed, it would shut down my cycle. And I didn't know that. I would just be like, where's my period? What's going on? And I would still have these horrible cramps, like digestive issues. Like having a regular bowel movement every day was very foreign to me.
And
That
that's
was not a
huge with
thing.
hormones. We don't like the
Yes.
gut connection. I think people just aren't realizing it. Sometimes people come into me and they're like, I want to work on my hormones. And I'm like, and then with all their
Yeah.
symptoms, I'm like, we need to start in your gut. And they're like, what? I'm not expecting this, but there's such a
Yeah.
strong correlation.
It's the basics. And I think everybody was trying to get super fancy with me. Take these supplements, do this. And I'm not even pooping every day. Let's
Yeah,
just
we
get
need to
down
start.
to the core.
Yes.
And so nothing. I was 3 years into it at this point, thousands of dollars down the drain in supplements that were stacked in my cabinet
Okay.
after trying them for however many long. And nothing was working. So I actually stopped. I was like, whatever. Like, alls I have from this is an extremely messed up relationship with food.
Okay.
Food was very good or it was bad, and I just couldn't eat food without guilt. And so that's when I actually started tracking my cycle, and I started noticing that I wasn't ovulating. I was
Oh.
like, oh, why? That's weird. Didn't
Mm-hmm.
know anything about this at this point, right?
Mm-hmm.
I just thought my period was my menstrual cycle and that was it.
Mm-hmm.
So noticed I wasn't ovulating. And then when I did ovulate, I had a very short luteal phase. So that's from your ovulation to your period. You want it to be 12 to 14 days, enough
Mm-hmm.
progesterone, and mine was 8. And so that was when all of these red flags were going off in my head. Like, why on earth were we not looking at why I wasn't ovulating before? That seems very odd to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I was getting married, I don't know, maybe a year from then. I don't know, somewhere along that timeline. And I obviously wanted to get pregnant. And I'm like, 8 days? I'm like, I'm not gonna be able to get pregnant with an 8-day luteal phase. That is not enough progesterone. That's not a long enough luteal phase. And I didn't go down the progesterone supplementation route at this point because doctors had already tried to put me on that, and that stuff made me psycho. Oh
Okay.
my goodness. I did not do well on progesterone supplementation at all. So I started hitting the books. So like a lot of women that are leading this space now, like Dr. Jolene Brighton, Dr. Laura Briden, Lisa Hendrickson, I think have a lot of books and information out there in women's health now. And I'm reading these books. I'm like, why did I not learn this when I was younger?
Yeah,
Um,
it should be like Women 101, right? Basics of
yes,
hormones.
yes. I'm like, when I
Yes.
learned about my period, could I also
Mhm.
have learned about ovulation? That would have been
Yes.
nice.
Mhm.
So that's what got me started. And then I kept working, kept reading, and just implementing what I learned. And then I went on to become a functional practitioner. And I regulated my cycles, lengthened my luteal phase to 12 days, had 2 healthy pregnancies. My fibroadenomas are gone, completely painless periods. And it wasn't a specific supplement. It wasn't like, oh, this supplement changed my life. It was looking at my cycle as a diagnostic tool and really looking at my health as a whole. Because the key for me was when I regulated those ovulations
Mhm.
and got out of the way, then everything started to fall into place. Because I think sometimes we jump too fast down the road of detoxing and
Mhm.
all of these things that your body is not ready for. And literally, the vitality of my body just wasn't even there. I
Mhm.
wasn't regularly ovulating. I wasn't having regular bowel movements. I would always have breakouts like along my jawline. And my body isn't even strong enough to do like the daily functions that we should be doing. And so when I started removing the toxins and the endocrine disruptors and literally just build my body up, like balance that blood sugar, nourish my body with food, reduce the stress, look at all of the things together, the puzzle pieces started to fall into place. And I started to notice those differences. So sometimes it's really just we overcomplicate it. It's just
Mhm.
putting your body into that healing environment. Your body's smart. Let's just give it the tools to figure things out itself.
Yeah. So let's say someone is listen that these are really good points. And let's say someone's listening and they think, "Oh, I can relate. I'm having a short luteal." Actually, let's take a step. I want to come back to this question.
Yeah.
But let's take a step back first and just go through the phases of our cycle.
Yeah. So we have 4 phases of our menstrual cycle. And this is where I think you can really look at your menstrual cycle as a diagnostic tool, right? Because when you notice things off with the phases, you can go, oh, red flag, something going on there. And that gives you more information. Let's say if you need to go to your doctor for X, Y, and Z. Your 4 phases of your menstrual cycle, you start with your period. This is the one that I think everyone thinks is the menstrual cycle. You have your period and then you're done. Let's not even think about our menstrual cycle until your next period. But your period is phase 1. It's part of it. So this should be anywhere from 3 to 7 days. And you really actually want to start looking at your period blood color to give you some information on your health. You're looking for that cherry red, deep wine red color. And you don't want to be bleeding less than 25 milliliters, and you don't really want to be bleeding more than 8. And I know everybody goes, how on earth do I measure that?
Yeah.
It's pretty simple. If you just think of a regular tampon or a regular pad that holds about 5 milliliters and an overnight one holds about 10. So you can just do the math, roughly go through it. Most people sit right there in the middle, which is great, right? It's just if you think about it and you go, wow, I'm somebody that uses an overnight pad or a super tampon and I'm changing 5 a day, that
Yeah.
starts to tell you, okay, maybe you're bleeding a little bit too much.
Hmm.
When you're done bleeding, you head into what's called your follicular phase. I think about this as spring. So that follicle is getting ready to release that egg, hence why it's called your follicular phase. This is typically everybody's favorite phase
Yeah.
because that estrogen's
Hmm.
rising and everybody wants to give estrogen a bad rap, but we like estrogen, just not too much, a nice balance of it. And it's your Beyonce hormone. So you definitely feel better about yourself. You're more creative. You're more energetic. We love that phase. And you head right into your ovulatory phase, which ovulation is just that 1 day event. You release the egg, it's a 1 day thing. You aren't like just randomly ovulating throughout your cycle. It's a 1 day event. But your ovulatory phase is when you start producing that cervical mucus leading up to ovulation. For most women, this can be 2 to 7 days, depending on how much cervical mucus you produce. And this is the phase estrogen's going to peak, testosterone's going to peak. So this is libido is higher during this time. I think this is something to just know because women expect to have libido the same across their
Hmm.
cycle. And so when it fluctuates, they go, oh, something's wrong with me. I'm like, no,
Yeah.
testosterone's literally the highest at this point and it's lower at other aspects of your cycle. So that's something to keep in mind because that is a sign of your health, right? Making sure you have enough nutrients and hormones to have that. Also, because your testosterone's at the highest, you actually are more empathetic and your communication skills are higher when these hormones are at their peak. So this is again one of those times when if hormones are balanced and they're doing what we want them to do, this is a favorite phase of most women. And then as you head into your luteal phase, estrogen's going to come down and your progesterone's going to rise. So that follicle that released the egg forms what's called the corpus luteum, which is what produces your progesterone. And corpus luteum, luteal phase. So you can see how these names came about. And this is actually your longest phase. So it should be 12 to 14 days. That tells us progesterone is looking sufficient enough. If it's under that, you get what's called an insufficient luteal phase, which sounds horrible, but it basically is just saying it's not long enough because we need that long enough for implantation to happen. And even though you may not be trying to get pregnant this cycle, you always have to look at your cycle as its primary purpose being reproduction. Even though your hormones affect your mood, your energy, your sleep, your weight loss, like all of the things, you also have to remember primary purpose is reproduction. So even like when you're looking at that luteal phase and you go, I'm not trying to get pregnant today, Leah. So I don't care if it's not long enough. You should care, because if it's not long enough, that's telling you you probably aren't producing enough progesterone, which means you're probably also going to potentially have heavier periods, clottier periods, more PMS, more bloating, more mood swings, more anxiety. And so even if you aren't trying to get pregnant, your fertility is a sign of your health. So I will say the luteal phase and the period, if you have imbalanced hormones, is pretty much everybody's most hated phase, because that's when everything starts to really crop up and just come to fruition of, hey, things are off.
Yes. What would you recommend them when you're looking at it and you realize that your luteal phase was short? Let's talk about some of the things that we can do to start helping to really improve that.
Yeah. So it's really going to be different for everybody on what is potentially your trigger. But some ones that across the board I always want to look at is thyroid. That's actually one that can affect your progesterone levels. So if you know off the bat, you're like, oh, I do have hypothyroidism. Again, you're going to be really wanting to focus building up the overall vitality of your body there. But stress is one of the biggest ones that impacts your progesterone levels and lack of nutrients. As a society, we just are overfed and undernourished. We need to really be looking at our food on how much is it nourishing us versus just, oh, I need to eat less because I'm trying to lose weight or XYZ, right? It's really, how is this nourishing my body? So progesterone, which is your dominant hormone in that luteal phase, is made from pregnenolone. And so is cortisol, which is your fight or flight hormone. Now, the fact that cortisol steals progesterone has been debunked, but your body is always trying to save you. So it's
Mhm.
going to prioritize making that. And it's okay, you're stressed. We need to make sure that we're going to survive the day. We want to be safe before we want to make babies,
Mhm.
right? So it's going to prioritize making that cortisol over progesterone. So stress is one of the biggest impactors on progesterone levels. Even women who think they're not stressed are stressed. They're
Yeah.
just so used to being
Yes.
stressed. That's our new normal, is go running on those adrenaline hormones, jumping from diet to diet so your body constantly thinks you're in a famine. So I would say number one thing that you can start off with is managing your stress, regulating your nervous system, unloading your stress bucket. And I don't think that any of us are ever going to live a stress-free life. You're never going to be able to go live in this bubble. I wish I could just snap my fingers and my kids would sleep through the night. That'd be great. All these wonderful things, but you can manage your stress. You can start to regulate your response. So is that you spending 5 minutes every day in silence? Or is it you making sure you get outside and get fresh air? Or is maybe that you need to get in a workout every day just to help with your mental health? Managing stress is going to be different for everybody on how you do that. But I would say that's number one. And then number two is actually getting in enough nutrients, like literally eating enough food, getting in enough good fats.
Mhm.
And number three is getting in the nutrients that you need for egg quality, because egg quality can actually change. You can affect your egg quality with your nutrition and your lifestyle, toxins, environmental. And when you have a better egg quality, you have a stronger corpus luteum, which means you're going to have more progesterone. Some things to think about in terms of egg quality are going to be foods that are high in zinc. That's a great one. I don't jump on the bandwagon of zinc supplementation because I think you can very easily displace your other minerals, but focusing on foods high in zinc is awesome.
Mhm.
Um, Chicken thighs are a food that's higher in zinc than regular chicken breasts. Getting those into the rotation is great. Oysters are great. Sardines are great. Pumpkin seeds have some zinc in there as well. That's amazing to help support that egg quality, making sure you're getting in enough variety of food. Just thinking about, am I getting in my protein, my fat, my carb, my fiber, getting in some vegetables, getting in some fruit? Or am I grabbing a protein bar and running out the door to take my kids to school? Or am I grabbing coffee and I'm running out the door? So simply just starting with that, I think is massive. Just eating enough, reducing your stress, getting in those nutrient dense foods is really important. And then my last one that's not food related is reducing your toxic intake, because that affects your egg quality. So, you know, plastics is a big one. I think I could spend all day on reducing your toxic intake because it
Yeah.
just hides everywhere.
Yes. Mhm.
But one of the biggest ones that I see is plastics,
Yeah, I agree.
because you may be meal prepping, you may be making all the good food, and then you're warming it up in the microwave in your plastic container,
Mhm.
and all
Yeah.
the plastics just leaching into your food.
Mhm.
Or you're drinking out of a plastic water bottle, things like that. I would say, yeah, if you're just going to start with one thing, I would switch your containers to glass, or at least if you ever warm up your food, can you just put it on a plate?
Mhm. I was working with a client one time who was actually spending the money buying like this. It was expensive, and it was this organic food company, and they were really had researched them well, and they were getting these foods, and then we were talking through it, and the directions when they got it were they came in plastic containers. And
Mhm.
then the directions were to heat them up in the plastic container in the microwave when they got there. And I was like, oh my gosh, you're making all of this effort here, and then you're
Oh, yeah.
leaching all of the plastic into your food when you're sitting in the plastic and then you're heating
Yeah.
it up. It's not always known, and to
Mhm.
really look at that, but the BPA can be a big problem with endocrine disruption.
Yeah, especially
Mhm.
with heat. And it's do what you can. Like for some people, like you were saying, your client, maybe the best thing that they could do is get a meal prep. But I'm like, just
Mhm.
open
Just
it
take
up,
it out.
put it
Yeah,
on a plate.
that's what I said. Exactly what
Yeah.
I told them. If you're gonna do this and this works for you, this is great, but just take it out of the container, heat it up
Yeah.
on a plate, and that's a
Hmm.
simple step that takes 10 seconds. So we
Yeah.
can we
Makes
can
a
do
world of
that. Yes.
difference. Yeah,
Yeah.
I totally
So
get that.
yes, a lot of people now are talking about how to sync your cycles. So syncing
Mhm.
your cycles, doing different things in different phases of your cycle. So can we talk a little bit about how that works?
Yeah. So cycle syncing is just using nutrition and your exercise and your lifestyle to support the rise and fall of your hormones. So just knowing which hormones are needing more support. If you're starting with your period, let's just think day one. Napping is a great exercise. Walking is great. Your hormones are at their lowest. You are literally shedding a uterine lining, losing iron, you're losing nutrients. So taking it slow. If you're good with some relaxing yoga, you want to go on a walk, I wouldn't be trying to hit a PR in the gym. Just
Yeah.
gentle movement is fine. But the foods that you focus on are very warming, easy to digest foods. So you're thinking beef, salmon, those are warming proteins, high in omega 3s. Omega 3s have been shown to lower prostaglandins, which are what cause your
Mhm.
period cramps if you have primary dysmenorrhea. Those foods are great, easy to digest. So sweet potatoes, buckwheat is really great. Everything very well cooked, very warming, very high in minerals. Seaweed snacks are really great. Mushrooms really great. Saute up some kale. You want to think very nutrient dense, colorful. Always, but really on your period. Easy to digest. So I cook everything. So it's not, you're not really, don't go for the smoothies. You want to, cold in Chinese medicine brings pain, warmth takes away pain. So really on your period, you're thinking warming drinks, those teas, maybe not your iced coffee, things like that.
Mhm.
And then when you're in your follicular phase, you actually will go for those cooling proteins because your body temp is cooler. So you're supporting the cooling body temp. If you digest veggies very well, lightly steaming, sauteing them is great because all of that fiber and nutrients are great for escorting the excess used up estrogen out of the body using that soluble fiber. If you seed cycle, which I love, you are doing pumpkin and flax seeds at this time, which is a
Mhm.
tablespoon of each. I like to do chicken, white fish, turkey. Those are your cooling proteins. I like to do a lot of vegetables that are high in DIM, like cauliflower, broccoli, get some good fats in there, avocado, and your seeds, pumpkin and flax. You have your lignans, you're high in zinc, which are great for helping estrogen adapt to your body. So if you need more, it helps you make more. If you need less, it helps you bring it on out. Zinc, again, great for egg quality. And again, we're eating chicken, so you got those thighs in there
Mhm.
with your zinc. And then in your ovulatory phase, you pretty much continue similar foods, but I start to add in a lot more vitamin C rich foods because that's been shown to help bring up those progesterone levels. This is a great time, as well as in that follicular phase, to go with your workouts. You actually are more sensitive to insulin during this time, so you do utilize carb better. You build strength easier, you build muscle easier. You're going to have a lot more energy. So this is a time like to hit those personal bests, and it's a time to, if you like HIIT workouts, get them in, get those cardio in, do all the things that you're loving. I know some people go, I go a lot harder in my workouts, or I do 5 to 6 at this. I do 5 to 6 workouts a week during this time. Make sure you're eating, obviously, enough food. I start really going to those like bell peppers, saute up those leafy greens, get your grapefruit and your lemon and get all those vitamin C rich foods and a lot of those sulfur rich and DIM rich foods. Brussels sprouts, broccoli, cauliflower, carrots are a great one. They have a lot of soluble fiber. So those are all the foods that we love during that time and the workouts during that time. And then as you head into that luteal phase, so once you ovulate, you switch your seeds to sesame and sunflower seeds, tablespoon of each. These are high in magnesium, these are high in vitamin E, these are high in soluble fiber. So again, everything that's escorting estrogen out, but these are also nutrients that have been shown to help support progesterone. So we're like, okay, here we go. And your B vitamins. And now we start shifting our food to like more of the raw and lightly cooked. We're going to more of the cooked. We're going to the warming proteins again. We're going to the easier to digest foods. Why? Because when we produce progesterone after we ovulate, you actually burn upwards of an extra 300 calories per day. That's because progesterone raises your body temp. So you're looking at the warmer proteins to support the warming body temp. So you're back on the beef, you're on the salmon, the venison. And it's not like every single meal you're like, oh, I can't eat chicken today because I'm in my luteal phase. It's just you prioritize the warming proteins and the easier to digest foods. So sweet potato is a great one. Peas, make some hummus. They're high in B vitamins. Those are really great. Making sure you're well cooking all of your vegetables because digestion isn't as great during that luteal phase, and lots of good fats. So eggs are a great one. Avocados are a great one. Getting your coconut oil in are a great one because that's how you're going to make those hormones. And your workouts, you still work out. It's not, oh, luteal phase, I'm not working out, but maybe instead of doing 3 sets of your exercise, you're going to back down to 2, or maybe you're going to listen to your body and you're like, okay, typically I do a 45-minute workout and I just was not feeling it. So I did a half an hour, or I just lowered my weights a little bit. So it's not like you don't work out. It's just listen and honor where your body is in that season. Make sure you're eating enough food, making sure it's easy to digest. And it's crazy. I have so many women that notice a massive difference in their digestion, not by even taking out foods, just by swapping the foods, because you're getting such a nutrient dense variety in that way. And you're also supporting your digestion where it's at in each part of your cycle.
Yeah, that's all so helpful. That's great information because I think, like you're saying, we're not taught to ever really consider this.
Mhm.
So many of us now, I think maybe our daughters at this point, things are coming out where we have so much more access to information. People are actually
Yeah.
talking about it, there's conversation. So they're actually in the place where they're considering this and knowledgeable. But I think for so many of us, like you're saying, it was just like, oh, you just deal with it. You get the hot water bottle out and put it on your belly early if you're having cramps and you deal with it. And it's just good to know, have all this information, have it on hand, and know that you don't have to. And I think like what you're, the other important part is not only do you not have to have the pain and feel the suffering, but you also are literally looking at that as a sign that something is off. That is not normal. So I think so many things like there, I see, like you're saying, not going to the bathroom every day or period cramps, or there's so many things that we are considered like they're common, but they're not normal. And we think just because they're common means that they're normal, and they're not. They're your body giving you this signal that something is going on. And we really need to address it.
Yeah, no, I agree. The red flags before they become like something much bigger.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you so much for all of the helpful information that you've given us today. And let us know where we can find you.
Yeah, so I also have a podcast which Meg was also on, so you can go listen to her episode. Our podcast is Balancing Hormones Naturally, so it's on all platforms. And then Instagram is typically where I hang out, which is just Leah, Leah_BRUEG.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being here today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thanks.